Hi, this is Zach with Worn&Wound. Today I'll be taking a look at the Autodromo Stradale watches. If you're not familiar with Autodromo, they're a brand that is focusing on Italian race car inspired watches. They've come out with several watches in the last couple of years, each one a little bit cooler even than the last. This new model, which is their new flagship model, the Stradale, is their first kind of full automatic line that's not limited. They had another watch called the Monoposto, but that was a very limited edition. This watch, which there are 3 colors of, is an open edition, and it kind of is just, showing the kind of point that they've reached with their brand of refinement and their design and concept. The Stradale watches are based on 50s and 60s Italian Berlinetta vehicles. They specifically are drawing from the dashboards, which had these interesting gauges that had floating glass rings on top of surfaces, which you can see in the dial here. So they take that inspiration, but it's also not hitting you over the head with kind of, vehicle-influenced things. It's keeping it kind of low-key, making it, I think, very appealing to both gearheads as well as just watch people. And then the rest of the watch is beautifully designed, very well executed, as all Autodromo watches are. The really, really cool strap. It comes in 3 different colors. There's a cream dial, the gray dial, and then the black dial, all of which are powered by Miyota 9015 automatic movements, and they all cost $875. So let's take a closer look. The case of the Autodromo Stradale bears some resemblance to the Monoposto case from a couple of years ago. That is a new design and actually a smaller case, but it does share the kind of wire lug concept. So this measures 40 millimeters in diameter, and because it is wire lugs, it really feels like wears almost like a lugless watch, like it's just 40 to 40, though from the edge of the lug, the wire, to the other edge, it's about 43 millimeters, so it is pretty small lug to lug. Then measures about 11 millimeters tall, and this is the top of the domed sapphire crystal here. As you can see from the side, the case shape is really interesting. It kind of domes around on the back, so it has a very kind of smooth case back. The wires come out of the case from the back there. Then it has a very tall, straight kind of central area that has these nice kind of delineation lines, which I don't actually think that there's an actual case break there. The line is really to break the form, to give it kind of a more, it's more of a visual detail, to make them just kind of, I think, that space feel a little bit smaller, a little bit more trim, and I think it works very well in doing that. When you're looking now also from the top, one interesting thing is that the wire lugs, rather than coming straight out and bending over, actually kind of angle in. I think that's a lot more of an interesting design. It definitely gives it a little bit more of an aggressive look. It takes it away a little bit from that kind of vintage, pocket watch conversion feel, and definitely more into this 50s, 60s sport vehicle place that it's needs to go. One detail that might be a little hard to pick up on camera, but the bezel here is actually concave. So typically a bezel would angle up towards the crystal. This is actually angling down towards the crystal, and it's fully polished in there, so you get some very interesting reflections when you're looking at the watch. It's a neat dynamic area, and though it's like a subtle thing, it actually makes it very different looking than other watches that have classic bezel designs. And then it's cool how that then goes down and into this domed sapphire crystal. Just has a very beautiful effect. Flipping the watch over now real quick, has a big display back here showing off the Miyota 9015 movement. Around the case back you have various details, as well as a nice little decorative pattern there. It's just like a really nice, it's something you don't see very often. It's just people using just a little bit of graphic element to activate a space, to use up negative space. And I just love that kind of detailing that they do. And then on the crystal there is an Autodromo logo electroplated on, which is just also a very cool way to kind of finish it all up. The dial of the Stradales has this very cool layered effect that I mentioned in the intro, where there's a base surface, and then floating above that is a second kind of glass surface that has printing on it that shows the hours. And this is what's referring to these Berlinetta vehicles, their dashboards. And it has just a very cool effect, one that I don't recall having ever seen before in a watch. And just gives it like a little bit more personality and play that just brings the whole thing to life. It also allows the designer to do things such as with this cream dial, where you have 2 different colors together, but in a way that is a little different than just a multicolored dial, because you have a different kind of sense of finish on the glass than on the surface below. So there's actually a lot of places they can go with this for color combinations, which is very cool. Yeah, so now looking at it on the base dial here, this one you have a cream, this matte cream, and you have linear markers, a linear index that shows, you know, the hour or 5-minute marker, and then a half hour, which is a little strange, but doesn't bother me. I think it, you know, I think you wanted to stay away from from making the dial too cluttered by adding probably individual minutes. It does give you a little bit more of a reference. At 3, you have a date window here. This has a black on silver date disc. I think it's fine across the various colors. We'll look at each dial. You know, it doesn't contrast too much, so I think it works there. There's also the Autodromo kind of staple little screw markers towards the center. If you look at all the Autodromo watches, that is just a little signature detail on all of them. It's not a very loud detail. It's actually something you can almost, you know, you get used to seeing it. It's like you forget that it's there. Moving to the outer floating disc now. This is, I believe, printed from the back, which gives it like a nice effect. So it's a very flat kind of gloss surface. Here you have an hour index and a very nice kind of dramatic typeface, double digits, rotates all the way around the dial, which I like that, rather than it flipping at 4 to come back upwards. You know, the 6 is totally upside down. I like that. It doesn't actually hinder reading it at all, because you know, just totally know obviously what time it is. Looking at the hands now, the hour hand is this kind of arrow pointed stainless steel polished hand, and then the minute hand is this pass-through bright red minute. I really like that they, you know, did this high contrast version of the hour and minute hand. There's obviously no difficulty in telling the two apart, and the red hand just looks really nice on all of the dials, brings that kind of vehicle feeling into it. The second hand then is then like a wispy, thin little silver stick hand that goes to the center, doesn't come through the other side. It's almost invisible, like you can see it or you can choose not to see it, which is interesting. I almost wonder what it would have looked like without it at all, but it is there and it's non-obtrusive. One interesting thing is that there's this silver dot over the central pinion here, and that's actually electroplated on the back of the crystal. So it has a mirror finish on it, and I think that does a cool thing to kind of, I don't know, covers up part of the hand, so you know, you don't see that central point. I think it makes it feel maybe like there's a broader axis running through. Just a nice little subtle detail that plays with things, and you know, I think just adds a little personality. Looking at the other colors now, you have the black dial version. What's interesting and different about this one is that on this one, the floating glass disc is actually transparent entirely, so you're seeing straight through it to the black underneath. And I actually think that might have been a little bit more kind of accurate to what those gauges from the Berlinettas might have been like, that they weren't colored like the other dials, but it has just this interesting effect where everything's floating above the dial. The black then is just, you know, it has white markers on it. It's very crisp, very clear, perhaps a little bit more aggressive looking than the other dial options. And now looking in at the gray, you have these two kind of grays. You have the matte gray from the surface and then the gloss gray. Same, I think, disc as that's on the cream. A little bit more of a monochromatic selection. It's really nice. I think the red really pops off of that in an interesting way. Yeah, all three of the colors are just very cool. On the wrist, the Autodromo Stradale wears extremely well. So it's 40 millimeters in diameter, but because of the wire lugs, you know, it doesn't feel long at all. So I actually think it wears even smaller than 40, feeling almost perhaps like a 38 or so. But it fits very well. It just positions very nicely on the wrist, and it's just a really beautiful watch, you know. I think what's kind of cool about this one, and kind of shows the evolution of the brand, is that it's a little bit more restrained. You know, he only uses a little bit of a few elements, you know, this floating disc, the red hand, to kind of bring the automotive feeling into the watch, but it's not too aggressive with those elements, so it's just a very nice wearable watch with a unique look to it. It has a nice kind of mix of sport and kind of dress casual. I think this is a wonderful watch if you wanted to wear to work that has just a little bit more kind of pizzazz, personality to it than other things you might find. It's definitely a unique look. it's just very attractive. I think it's a very nice and stylish watch. Like, it's kind of a timeless style. This will look good with all sorts of different kinds of clothing. And then straps they come with are just really cool. So this watch, actually, unlike the other Autodromos, has an 18mm lug width here. The only unfortunate side of that is that this strap then doesn't work with the other Autodromo watches, and it's such a cool strap that I would love to have it on some of the other Autodromo watches, as well as probably every 20mm watch I have. It's a very cool strap. It has these kind of pill-shaped pads in it, which refer to, say, the leather seating in muscle cars, race cars from the 60s and 70s. It's another subtly bringing in that vocabulary without kind of hitting you over the head. So it's just a cool way of activating this leather strap. Otherwise, it's a very thin piece of leather, which I like, but it's sturdy. It's not cheap feeling at all. Had this one, the black, comes with this beautiful burgundy color, which works really well, really kind of makes that black stand out. Really glad that they didn't just do black with black, which would have been, I think, typical, but this is much more exciting. Yeah, really just nice. The Autodromo buckle here too. It's a slightly different buckle. Its thumbnail, it has these kind of two broad ridged sidebars and a flatter area in the center, so it's a little bit more interesting and dynamic looking. Looking now at the other options, the gray comes with this beautiful inky deep blue color. It's kind of it's not quite a navy, it's more of almost a Mediterranean blue. It's really gorgeous, works really well with the gray, makes the blue pop out. I think it makes the gray of the dial here feel a little bit cooler even, cooler in temperature, which is interesting, and it's a great blue. I think it would look great on the other watches as well. You can interchange that. And then looking at the cream dial, this one comes on kind of like a medium brown, which I think works well with the color combination here. This is perhaps the most subtle of the combinations, or kind of classic or typical. One thing I did notice here though is that the brown leather does get a little distressed over the pills. I think it's kind of it's kind of cool looking, and actually it's almost like a kind of a worn in vintage look, but it does seem to be getting a little bit funny in there. Yeah, I would also like, the burgundy on that dial would be absolutely great too. So you definitely want to get this and probably get all the straps with it. Autodromo puts a really nice emphasis on their packaging, and I think their approach to packaging is admirable. Rather than trying to give you something that's over the top luxury and decadent, some giant box that you might not be able to really keep around, they just give you some more subtle, very on-brand cases with some interesting graphics. So there's a box. It would be inside of this sleeve. I just have it below for simplicity, but this outer sleeve just kind of gets things rolling. And what it is, it's a period correct map from a town in Italy with all the roads on it. No branding, just this straight up map that's a full wrap around. So immediately kind of just brings in the story of the watch to mind rather than the brand, and I think that's really cool. It's an interesting way to go, and it's just simply a kind of an attractive piece of material here. You slide the case out of that. Inside is this black leather flip-up case that with a snap in the front here. It's a nicely detailed little box, so it has a nice texture to it, and it has a quilted pattern on it, which I like. Definitely a cool looking piece here. You flip open the snap on the front, and inside you have this beautifully presented timepiece in their kind of signature red, velveteen material here. I like how the watch is positioned. It's actually quite secure and safe in there. And then on the top side here, you have a little area that holds a pamphlet I'll show you in a second, as well as a gold foil Autodromo logo. Inside then you have this great little pamphlet, once again continuing the map theme. This has obviously been, it's the instruction manual for the watch, but it still continues that story. So it folds out like a road map. The paper itself has been printed to look like aged paper. It's really beautiful. Has all this stuff on it that doesn't pertain to the watch but would pertain to a map, various locations, road signs. But then here you do have information about the watch, how to set it, how to use it, the guarantee, all presented in nice fonts, not any kind of generic, straight out of the computer font. Everything is very intentional, very well thought out. And then the other side is another road map here. It's very cool with this Dromo 2-year guarantee strap on it, as well as the sale date. So it just, this is absolutely something you'd keep at the watch. It's just really cool, and kind of just tells you the story, which I really like that there's a focus on that with these watches. To wrap up, I think the Autodromo Stradale watches are, a great new offering from the brand. It's a great new flagship model for the brand. I'm really glad to see that a mechanical watch is now kind of at the center of their brand, and then they can, do other things like use the mecha quartz movements as kind of secondary to this stronger mechanical core, if you will. The design of these watches is really cool. I really love how he subtly plays with the automotive influence, the Italian influence, yet, like I said, these watches they're not too extreme. They don't hit you over the head. They're not, covered in tire tracks or some, flames or anything like that. The vehicle elements, the automobile elements to the watches just play into kind of a typical watch vocabulary, so it works very well. Obviously, kind of the standout features on this watch are the floating glass index, which is it's cool. It adds an element of depth to the dial. It's definitely unique, but it doesn't scream out. It's not, the whole watch isn't about that. It's just it's part of the overall design that works really well. The case is beautifully executed, as always. 9015 inside is a great movement. Beautiful straps. I love all the colors. I would love to have probably all 3 of them with one of these watches, to switch it around. I think all 3 would work with any of the watches, so it is nice how that plays out. The price of $875, I think people are probably going to say that's high for a Miyota 9015. I think that's totally kind of on par with what we're seeing now for Miyota 9015s, and it's not just about the movement, it's about the design as a whole, it's about nothing being stock, it's about the level of finish, and I think that these watches are above and beyond, as are all Autodromos, that they're really above and beyond the prices that they're at for the finish and the build quality. He really just gets an exceptionally built watch for the price. So yeah, $875 I think is fair, and I think it's just an exceptionally well executed piece. So please read the full review of Worn&Wound. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Thank you.